There were soldiers and armored vehicles on the streets. Another tense night in Myanmar. But despite the security patrols and an internet blackout, protesters gathered for a 10th straight day. One group of the Civil Disobedience Movement, CDM for short, stood in front of the central bank in Yangon and continued with their calls for the military government to step down and the country's democratically elected leaders to be released.
We are protesting peacefully, without weapons and with no intention of violence, to call for CDM and fight for the freedom of government staff.
This as the military junta issued a statement on its Facebook page outlining the possible punishments for protesters, saying any act, spoken or written, that expresses or incites hatred of the government could lead to 20 years in prison. People gathered outside a court in the capital Naypyidaw, hoping that deposed civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi would be released on Monday. Those hopes soon dashed.
According to the remand which was set, today is the last day of the remand period. But from the discussions with the district justice, the remand period is now until the 17th, not today.
Suu Kyi was one of the first to be detained in the early hours of the coup 2 weeks ago. She's been charged with illegally importing 6 walkie-talkie radios. According to a monitoring group, more than 400 people have now been detained since the February 1st coup. There's a vast range of people within that group, and that's of real concern for 23-year-old fortune teller Charlotte. A fellow Yangon fortune teller was arrested a few days ago after a video of him praying for the military to fail went viral.
Since they're dictators, they can make up whatever laws they like to oppress us. We astrologers are like birds in their hands. If they squeeze, we are dead. If they let us fly, we are free. This is the nature of dictatorship. And it's not just happening to us, it's everyone.
And that's probably why protesters are coming out in strength. The ruling National League for Democracy NLD party won by a landslide in last November's election and was extremely popular. Most see this move by the military as a nullification of their vote and their voice. Scott Heidler, Al Jazeera.
So let's go live to Divya Gopalan, who's following developments from Hong Kong. And Divya, so we've heard about soldiers shooting at the protest. What more do we know?
That's right. In the city of Mandalay, which is the second largest city in Myanmar, we've heard that security forces and police were shooting to disperse protesters there. Now, it's unclear whether they were using rubber bullets or live fire. Now, in that city, the protest movement has been quite strong, as it has been in the largest city, Yangon, which is also the commercial hub. And for the first time there have been tanks and armored vehicles on the streets. And as Scott said in his report, people still remain defiant. Video of people shouting at the military to leave and cars honking their disapproval have been circulating. Now, despite their defiance, there is still a lot of concern, though, that the situation could escalate, given that those soldiers in those tanks and then those that have been seen on the streets are combat soldiers with a reputation for brutality. So there is worry that there still could be bloodshed and the situation could deteriorate. But so far, the protesters are holding strong and coming out in their numbers.
And as all that is going on, Aung San Suu Kyi's hearing has been pushed forward to Wednesday. Do we know what might happen then?
Very hard to tell. The goalposts have been moving consistently. The Aung San Suu Kyi's lawyers say the judge says it's on Wednesday, but whether she will actually appear in court or whether the court proceedings will be further delayed is unclear. Now, presumably the military junta is very concerned about having Aung San Suu Kyi appear in any kind of public forum, as she's seen as the symbol of this democratic movement, and having her out in public could just galvanize the protest movement. Now, given that the military government has changed the laws over the weekend, and these laws once again will affect both Aung San Suu Kyi's trial and also the way things operate on the ground. And one of those laws is of particular concern to the protesters, especially as we're coming up to curfew now, where many of the protesters will be heading home in about half an hour. But also, along with the cover of darkness comes the arrest. And one of those laws basically gives the security forces the ability to arrest people without any court orders. And that's what's been happening. These security forces and police have been going into people's homes, searching them, making random arrests without any charges. And so far, 400 people have been arrested. They include allies of Aung San Suu Kyi, politicians, human rights activists, protesters, student leaders, journalists, and the list goes on. So as darkness falls now, what many of these protesters will be worrying about is their personal safety and whether they will be next.
All right, Divya, thanks for that. Divya Gopalan, following events there in Myanmar from Hong Kong. Let's hear now from Nicky Diamond, who's a human rights specialist at Fortify Rights in Yangon. And he says there's no end in sight for the protest movement.
Today we called nationwide CDM civil disobedience movement. Now a lot of protests in front of the central bank. So the situation last night very intense. We have an internet blackout 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. And also during that time, military start arresting people around the country. We don't know how many people arrested, but the situation is very intense. During the election, we have a different kinds of group, but because of this military coup, all people in the country are united against the military. Even who dislike the NLD right now, they are marching on the street, who are no vote, and also they are marching on the street against this military coup. So that happened, and also we are now united against the military.